The information provided by Trading Forex Price Action to you does not constitute personal financial advice. The information provided is of a general nature only and does not take into account your individual objectives, financial situation, or needs. It should not be used, relied upon, or treated as a substitute for specific professional advice. Hey guys, this is a weekly forecast from May 23rd through the 27th of 2022. Just a quick heads up, if you're wondering what the current setup is for the Euro-Yen pair, please refer to last week's midweek analysis. And I'm not going to post it on this forecast because there aren't many changes to the analysis. Okay, so let's start off with the Euro dollar. Okay, this is the monthly chart. We'll start off with an overview. So since this price action right here is very strong short, and this move still having a ways to go, in the long term I'm short biased right back down to this pivot low right here. And moreover, since there was a new weekly long trade that formed this week, and when this long strength is compared to the last weekly short trade that formed right here, it is only slightly stronger. So in the short term, I am neutral biased. Okay, let's talk entries. Okay, this is a weekly chart. Let me run you by what's been happening on this pair for the last couple of months. So back in April of 2021, there was a strong short trade that formed. And the prior long trade that formed on this weekly chart was right here. Now this short trade was stronger than this long trade, so the weekly bias was short. Or in other words, price was likely to reach this pivot low before reaching this pivot high. And that main target was hit right here. However, as price continued down past that main target on each of these pullbacks, there were never any signs of strong long strength on the lower time frames, so price just continued down to extension targets. And then moreover, as price pulled back again right here, with again no strong lower time frame long strength, there was actually a new weekly short trade that formed right here. However, this new weekly short trade hit its main target at a monthly gap level that runs right through here. And so at this point, the bias on this weekly chart became long. Or in other words, price was likely to reach this pivot high before reaching this pivot low. And that main target was hit right here. And now again, although the weekly bias became long in this area, there was still no signs of strong long strength on the lower time frame, so price continued down all the way back down here, where there was a new weekly short trade that formed again right here. And just this week, there was a new weekly long trade that formed right here. Alright, so let me show you the price elements that are providing short strength for this last short trade, as well as the elements that are providing long strength for this new weekly long trade. So let's go over to the monthly chart. Okay, so on this monthly chart, that last weekly short trade that formed was right here. Now, in terms of monthly elements, there are no monthly elements that are providing short strength for that weekly short trade. Now, that said, there was a weekly fake HNS that actually hit its target height level, roughly in these areas right here, that are providing weekly short strength for this short trade. Okay, and on the other hand, that weekly long trade that formed in this area right here, firstly has this medium gap level right here that's providing long strength. And moreover, there's a trend line that's also providing long strength. So let me show that to you. Okay, so that monthly trend line is from this pivot to this pivot right here. Okay, so this monthly trend line is also providing long strength. Okay, let me just zoom back in here. Alright, so along with that monthly trend line that provides long strength, and more of this median sized gap right here that provides long strength, this long trade also has weekly strong short strength provided by this fake weekly HNS that formed that hit its target height. Now, taking into consideration this weekly overarching short strength here, between this last weekly short trade and this new weekly long trade, there's only slightly stronger long strength for this weekly bias. So I will be looking at the lower time frame confirmations for entries in both directions. So let me show you what I'll be looking for on the lower time frame. So let's go over to the 4-hour chart. Okay, so on this 4-hour chart, in terms of short lower confirmation, I'm looking at this trend line from this pivot to this pivot right here. Now if we get a breakout, an immediate break back in, signaling normal long strength. However, price will pull right back down to that pivot low. That will signal strong short strength and will confirm a weekly short bias. However, in this case, I will not be taking any mid-road short entries, for the overarching short strength on the weekly chart is on the same time frame of this weekly bias. So this short strength provided by the weekly chart does not apply in this bias scenario. So if we get this strong short strength to form right here, I'm going to need a major pullback all the way up to where that weekly short trades pivot high is, way above at higher levels. So that's an unlikely setup to form in the near future. And so in terms of lower confirmation of long strength, the stop loss level is at this pivot low right here, which is much closer to current price, making it an entry setup that is much more likely than a short entry. So in terms of lower time frame long confirmation, I'm looking at this trend line from this pivot to this pivot right here. Now if we get a breakout, an immediate break back in, showing normal short strength, how price could come right back up to that pivot high, that will show strong long strength and thus confirm a weekly long bias. However, in this case, again, since I'm not taking any mid-road entries, I'm going to need price to pull all the way back down close to that weekly stop loss level right here, perhaps to these 0430 levels right here, for about 100 pip stop loss, again with the stop loss level right here, and its main target way above at that weekly short trades pivot high. Okay, so we'll just see what happens with this one. However, just remember that I will not be taking any mid-road entries on this pair, for although there is strong weekly short strength on this pair, at the current moment, we're dealing with the weekly bias, which is on the same time frame, which makes this strong short strength on the weekly chart unusable for mid-road entries. Alright, so let's go on to the dollar CAD. Okay, and if you're having trouble understanding what I'm talking about in terms of weekly biases and lower time frame confirmations, please watch my price action trading course. For that course is designed to provide you necessary information so you can understand how to trade price action. Okay, so this is the monthly chart. We'll start off with an overview. So since there was a trend line breakout of this trend line from this pivot to this pivot right here, with a breakout and immediate break back in, signaling normal long strength. However, this type of consolidation pattern after normal strength is created is typical of price coming right back down to that pivot low to make strong short strength. And so in the long term, I'm short biased right back down to this pivot low right here. And moreover, since there was a daily long trade that formed right here and a daily short trade that formed right here, and for the time being, this short trade is slightly stronger than this long trade. So in the short term, I'm also short biased right back down to this pivot low right here. Okay, let's talk entries. Okay, this is a daily chart. Let me run you by the current setup I'm looking at. So last month at this point right here, there was a strong daily long trade that formed. And then moreover, as price rose, at each of these points right here, there were weak short trades that formed, creating a daily long bias. And moreover, as price got to that main target, and moreover went beyond it, the same thing happened. There was another weak daily short trade that formed. However, last week at this point right here, there was actually a new daily short trade that formed that, in my opinion, is slightly stronger than this last long trade. And so for the time being, I'm looking to the lower time frames for lower confirmation so I could perhaps get an entry for a short trade. So let me show you what's happening on the lower time frame confirmation. Let's go over to the 4-hour chart. Okay, so if you recall my midweek analysis, I was mentioning there was strong short strength confirmed from this trend line, from this pivot to this pivot right here. As you can see, there's a breakout and immediate break back in. However, price pulled right back down to that pivot lows and thus creating strong short strength. However, at this point, I was not able to take a short entry, for the stop loss for that daily bias is at this pivot high right here. So I needed a pullback right up to these 2970 levels for me to take a short entry with the stop loss at this pivot high right here and its main target right down here. In this week, we did not get that full pullback and price fell all the way down to these levels. Now at this point, there is a possible strong long strength that's about to form. So let me show you that. Okay, so that's from this trend line, from this pivot to this pivot right here. Now, as you can see on the close of last night's 4-hour candle, there was a breakout and immediate break back in. And so at this point, there was normal short strength created. However, price could pull right back up to this pivot high that will create strong long strength and actually confirm a daily long bias at that point. In which case, I will not be taking a long entry. For the stop loss in this case is at these levels right here. And it's highly unlikely that we'll get a pullback all the way down to these levels. Alright, so what I'll be looking for in terms of strong short strength confirmation is as follows. So again, on this trend line from this pivot to this pivot right here, as you can see, we already had the breakout and immediate break back in. However, price will pull right back up to this pivot high. That will create strong long strength. However, simultaneously, if we could get a legitimate V-shaped recovery right when the strong long strength is created at this level right here, that would actually show extreme short strength. Okay, and this V-shaped recovery, I'm looking for it to form on the even lower time frames like the 1 minute to 15 minute charts. Now, if we could get this extreme short strength to form and then further get a pullback to this 29.70 levels up here, then I'll be willing to take a short entry, again with the stop loss at this pivot high and its main target right down here. Okay, so on this pair also, I cannot take any mid-road entries where the stop losses are smaller. So if this strong long strength does confirm that daily bias to be long, I will not be taking any entries on this pair. And the only possible entry I can take is for lower confirmation short strength to stay intact and moreover get a pullback right up to the 29.70 and beyond levels for a short entry. Okay, so we'll just see what happens with this one. So let's go on to the Aussie Yen pair. Okay, this is a monthly chart. We'll start off with an overview. So since there was strong long strength confirmed from this trend line, from this pivot to this pivot right here, with a breakout and immediate break back in, confirming normal short strength. However, price coming right back up a couple months later to stop out that pivot high where that normal short strength was created and thus creating strong long strength. And so in the long term, I'm long biased right back up to this pivot high right here. And over on the weekly chart, since there was a short trade that formed right here and a new weekly long trade that formed right here. However, since there was only slightly stronger long strength than short strength on those weekly trades, in the short term, I'm neutral biased. Okay, let's talk entries. Okay, this is a weekly chart. Let me run you by what's been happening on this pair for the last couple of months. So back in December of 2021, at this point right here, there was a weak short trade that formed. And then about a month later, there was a strong long trade that formed. And so the weekly bias was long. Or in other words, price was likely to reach this pivot high before reaching this pivot low. However, recall like I showed you on the monthly chart, there was monthly strong long strength on this pair. So this was a great opportunity to extend past that main target level right here. Okay, as price rose all the way up to these levels this year, there was actually a new weekly short trade that formed right here. And moreover, this week, there was actually a new weekly long trade that formed right here. So let me show you the price elements that are providing long strength, as well as the short elements that are providing strength for this short trade. So let's go over to the monthly chart. Okay, so on this monthly chart, that weekly short trade formed in this area, while that weekly long trade formed in this area. As you can see, the only price elements that are providing strength in both directions are through gaps. First of all, for this short trade, we had this medium-sized gap right here that provides short strength. However, simultaneously, there was a big gap right here that's providing long strength. So if we're talking strictly in terms of gaps, there's actually more long strength than short strength on this short trade. So in other words, the strength short on this weekly trade is actually in the negative. However, that said, there's also this monthly hammer that formed right here, which in this case provides a lot of short strength. Now the reason is because, like I showed you on the overview, there was strong long strength confirmed from this trendline breakout and break back in right here. However, price pulling right back up to that pivot high to create strong long strength. Now when there's strong long strength on a pair and on that same time frame, there's actually a hammer that forms. that often shows that this strong long strength already ran its course. Okay, and in terms of the long strength for this long trade, as you can see, there's a mini gap right here. And moreover, there's a small gap down here that's providing long strength. However, this again is running into this big gap right here, which is actually providing short strength for this long trade. However, that said, the strong long strength created right here does add to this long trade's long strength. Okay, so in total, in my opinion, there is ever so slightly more long strength on this long trade than short strength on this short trade that formed right here. However, since the relative strength is minimal, I'll be watching the lower time frame confirmations to decide the bias and furthermore the direction of entries. Let me show you what I'm looking at. Let's go over to the 4-hour chart. Okay, so on this 4-hour chart, try drawing this trend line from this pivot to this pivot right here. Now if we get a breakout and immediate break back in, however, price comes right back up to that pivot high, that will create strong long strength, and in that case I'll be willing to take a long entry. However, again, since the weekly bias's long trade stop loss level is at this level right here, I will be needing a nice pullback at least to about 100 pips to the stop loss levels to take a long entry. And moreover, again, I will not be taking any mid-row long entries on this one. For that monthly hammer that I showed you earlier that formed at these levels right here, does often show that that overarching monthly long strength already ran its course. Okay, so in terms of short entries, I'll be looking at this trend line from this pivot to this pivot right here. Now I'm going to need the opposite on this one, so we're going to need a breakout to the downside, then an immediate break back in. However, price could pull right back down to that pivot low. That will show strong short strength. But in this case, I'm going to need a nice pullback all the way up to these levels, where that weekly short trade stop loss level is right here for a short entry. So for the time being, if I were to take an entry on this pair, this long trade seems to be more viable, simply because price is closer to that stop loss level at this pivot right here. Okay, so I'll keep you guys updated with what happens on this one. Okay, so that's it for the weekly forecast. Like I posted in my forecast, I have two types of entry styles, and that's the mid-road entry style and the typical or normal bias entry setups. Now the mid-road entry styles are much more aggressive in terms of risk reward. So what I mean is that the reward is much higher than normal bias setups. So how I reference these two types of entry setups is that mid-road entries tend to be more aggressive and typical bias entries are more relaxed. Now what I want to explain to you guys is that these two entry setups can also show you what type of market you're currently in, because the mid-road entries typically form in more aggressive markets where there's explosive moves in price, while the normal bias setups tend to happen in more relaxed markets where the market's price movement is much more gradual in comparison. Now knowing this type of information of whether a market is in an explosive market or a relaxed market can define your posture toward trading for that time period. So if the market is in an explosive market, you really want to eye and keep your eye out on the markets because those type of explosive markets typically do not give you any pullbacks or second opportunities for entries. While on the other hand, relaxed markets often give you second or third entry opportunities for each trade setup. So knowing the type of market you're in will prepare your mindset and your posture toward trading. So if I'm going to take a break from trading, I'm going to want to do it during more relaxed markets. But when there's relaxed markets, you have second and third opportunities to enter, and moreover, it's much easier to trade from your phone or your iPad or something that's much more inconvenient. Okay, so I hope you guys have a great week, and thanks for watching, guys. Okay, bye.